Hello, we're going to go over some of the requirements for Project 1, and in particular we're going to go over the web-based platform that is required for this project. So remember with this project that you need a 750-word research essay, which is essentially 3 pages, 3 to 4 pages, where you indicate your information that you found from your interview with your professionals in your field, as well as with the librarian that you interviewed, and you'll see student examples posted to the Project 1 Blackboard folder that you can review. What you also want to be able to do is create at least a 3-page web-based platform in which you take all of this very technical information and make it accessible for possible students or new members to this academic discourse community that you've researched, in which you tell us the 6 characteristics of your discourse community. What are the goals? What are common forms of communication? The expertise needed, the lexis, etc. You need to list 3 major communicative practices used by members of this discourse community, such as maybe there's emails, conferences, and research papers, and why those are used, what that says about this academic discourse community, and so on. You also need to have a list of prominent participatory mechanisms or venues where members publish, share, and discuss information. This, of course, would come from the librarian that you've interviewed, but possibly also from the professionals that you've interviewed as well. You also want to talk about the genres that are used in this discourse community for communication. What types of genres are used typically on a daily basis? Why are they used? What they say about that discourse community's goals, expertise, belief systems, viewpoints, etc. You would want to list any major topics of conversation or research or interest for this discourse community. This could be general, but should also be specific, and that maybe there are some new and interesting research foci or maybe types of decision making or policies or whatever it may be, depending on that discourse community. And then you, of course, certainly need a biographical list of all the sources you've used, both in your essay as well as in your website. Now, there are some websites that you can use, and we're going to go over a few of them, and these are, of course, not the only sites that you can use, but these are some of the more easy and accessible sites that you can use. So the first is a Weebly. Well, I'm sorry, this is not a Weebly. This is just a typical HTML website that was created by a student, in which they discuss the rhetorical writing conventions and goals of their nursing discourse community. Now, since this is a new assignment that has been developed for English 3010, we don't yet have any student examples that are specific to this course, so what I'm showing you are just examples of different types of web-based platforms that you can use for your web-based component of Project 1, and I tried to find examples in which they at least would discuss some of the key project requirements and objectives. So you want to keep that in mind, that this doesn't encompass everything that you would be placing onto your web-based platform. But this one does a good job in where it talks about an analysis of the writing conventions in the field, and so it gives a quick overview of what that means. And then it talks about the common genre conventions that are used, which of course would be a topic that you would need to discuss. It talks about the structure of those genre conventions, how it's organized, the formality needed, informality, accuracy in data, etc. What I would consider to be lacking in this section would be that this is simply a list of the conventions, but no description or indication as to why those conventions would be necessary for this academic discourse community. Why is it that organization is so important? How is it organized? Why must one be concise? And give me an example of that. So that might be missing. Now there is an example of conventions in the educational setting in which students practice both formal and informal conventions of writing and why that might be. There's a link to a project to show this further. Conventions of writing in the practice setting. This would be where you're actually in the medical field, where you use objective and subjective data when writing. And there isn't a link to a care plan that gives an example of that type of professional setting writing convention. And then they go into the professional setting. This would be more when one does research, and they talk about the standard research format, and they give us a list. And again, this is lacking because they don't tell us what these sections are and why they're used and what that says about this discourse community. And then it talks about the audience for this writing and the purpose for that writing. So all in all, it does provide some interesting information, but there are some lacking points. The next is a Weebly. You can create a free Weebly account. Weeblies are very easy to use. It's pretty much a grab and drop kind of feature. You are able to create across the page kind of like embedded pages, which I think is actually a lot more visually appealing than just this long page after page, such as Blogger. And Blogger can be used, but it's visually just kind of tedious. And you'll see that there's various different formats that you can choose with various different types of embedded linking capabilities and page capabilities. Some are on the top, some are on the side. This one's an academic writing guide to genre and format for the medical field. And you'll see that this is, and they'll talk about academic writing for publication. So, and they'll go over the key aspects of that, where stating your purpose within and creating an abstract, how it's laid out, uses of columns, the types of typeface and font, how you'd insert graphs and images and why you would do so, quoting and sources, etc. Now again, this is just a very small component of information that you would necessarily need, and in fact this might be rather in-depth when it comes to one of the types of genres that you might discuss that is used in your discourse community. But it's a nice site to look at and see the kind of the benefits of using Weebly, and you of course can make this much more jazzier and pretty depending on what kind of design you choose. Wix is another one that you can use now. This is talking more about the genre conventions of film, in particular the use of steampunk in the Wild West movie. So this is not exactly indicative of what you would be doing for the web-based component of Project One, but it's just an example of how Weebly works. And so Weebly is very similar to Wix. I'm sorry, this is Wix. Wix is very similar to Weebly in that it has very easy drop and grab kind of components. This one, as you can see, has its kind of embedded page links on the side, and on top of that then you can embed other types of page links within. From what I understand, with a lot of the students who have used this before, they like some of the designs that you can choose, and and I believe that it's a little bit easier to kind of manipulate the page and the color. So it depends on how fancy or how visually arresting you would like this web-based component of Project 1 to be. So of course you would need 3 main pages for your web-based project, and within those you might have some sub-pages. So if you're going to talk, for instance, about genres and its use as a form of communication, you might then have embedded into that page, the genres of charting, the genres of doctor assessments, the genres of academic publication, etc. If you're talking about the characteristics of your discourse community, you might give us an overview of Swales and Johns and their definitions of discourse communities, and then maybe have embedded pages in that page of the 6 characteristics that are required to be a member of an academic discourse community. So it depends on what you would like to do for the organization, but remember, just because you have 3 pages doesn't mean that it's just that one static page. It would be much more appropriate and visually kind of interesting to have pages embedded in with that page, so that you're not scrolling and scrolling and scrolling down each individual page. Again, if you have any questions, you certainly can email me. One thing that I want to remind you is that, as I said, I direct the Bright Zone. It's on the 2nd floor of the UGL, and we have rows and rows of Macs with the capability of doing this type of web-based projects. We have a technology guru who works there, so you could go in, it's drop-in hours, you go in, you say, I need to do this, I need help. He will help you. It's fabulous. I more than likely would be there, so I could certainly sit down with you as well. So if that's something you're interested in, again, it's a walk-in kind of service, and we're open Monday and Tuesdays 10 to 6, Wednesdays 10 to 5, and Thursdays 10 to 6. Okay, thanks.